Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to create a gradient, how to use the gradient tool. So I'm going to delete everything on the screen. I'm going to make a shape. I'm just going to fill it with a solid color. And what I want to do is I want to pull up a new palette. So we've learned how to create swatches. We've learned how to create patterns. We've learned how to make custom colors. We're going to look at the gradient tool. So I'm going to go to Window and choose Gradient. So a gradient is a color that transitions to a few other colors. And there's two types of gradients in Illustrator. It's either a radial gradient that goes from inwards outwards, emanating outwards like the sun, or it's a linear gradient. It's going to go left, right, up, down, etc. Right now it's set to linear gradient, and I want to create a gradient. So I come down here and I click down on the gradient slider. When I click on the gradient slider, there are these little knobs down here, and those indicate the color that I'm working with. When I click on the first knob, the color resets to grayscale. So I want to click on each one of those knobs and set it to the color system that I'm currently using. I'm going to set it to CMYK. Then I'll click on the other knob on the other end and set it also to CMYK. And now I can use any color in the spectrum here. So I'll click on the first knob, and then I'll click on a color. It's going to load the color, and then I can add another stop anywhere. Those are called stops, anywhere underneath, and click and add in an additional color. Click and add another stop, and then click and add in another color. Click and stop and add in another color. The little diamonds on top are the transition points, the 50% mark between one color and another, and I can manipulate that by grabbing it and moving it. If I decide I don't want a particular stop, I can just click and drag it and drop it right out of there. After I mix my gradient, I want to save my gradient. Just like when I created my patterns, I'm going to click on my gradient, grab it, and drag it and drop it into my swatches. And then I can also apply the gradient by selecting the shape and then clicking and applying the gradient. Now that I've applied the gradient, I want to transition where the color sits inside of the shape. And I can use the percents here to adjust the position of the gradient. And that's a mathematical way to do it. Negative 45 degrees, positive 120 degrees. You can also use the gradient tool in the toolbar. If I come over, click on the gradient tool, I get this little widget here. And with the widget, I can move the position of the gradient, and I can rotate it, change where the colors are inside of the gradient, grab the gradient and reposition it. Let's see here. We want to rotate that thing. There we go. So I can grab that, and I can rotate by that handle. And then once again, you'll see the transition points between the colors inside of there. And there's my gradient tool. That's how I apply a gradient. That's how I manipulate the gradient. And that's how I save my gradient.